President of the Albany. My name is Sharon Cates-Williams, and I am the president of the Albany, New York Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Incorporated. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this virtual panel discussion on the topic of mental health of school-age children and their parents. Currently, we find ourselves in what can only be described as an inconceivable and personal moment in time. When we started 2020, there were no predictions that within 8 months, we would all be impacted by a global pandemic that would cause social isolation, depression, anxiety, and fear of the unknown. This public health crisis has left us all yearning for the good old days, when we didn't have to social distance and wear protective coverings. Tonight, we have been afforded an opportunity to hear from a panel of experts who will share best practices for children and adults during this incredible and daunting time that we are living in. I encourage everyone listening to take notes and remain encouraged. I would like to thank our panel of experts in advance for the knowledge they will impart, and thank my sorors of the Albany, New York Alumni Chapter for advancing this critical and most important discussion. I know that we will survive this and live to tell the story. So I invite you to sit back, relax, take care, and be well. Thank you.
All right, so good evening, everyone. So my name is Boahema Pinto-Smith, and I'm co-chair of the Physical and Mental Health Committee, along with Amber McNeil. And we just thank you so much for joining us here tonight so we can talk about this important topic, talking about our children, parents, and everyone that's involved in this big village. So we wanted to talk about this because more and more school children are struggling to cope with their mental health. This was true even before COVID-19. Predictability is a stabilizing force for children and adolescents, but as we all know, it's been disrupted since the COVID-19 outbreak. A loss of routine for many students, social isolation, feelings of loneliness, along with an increase in domestic violence and substance abuse. All of this during the pandemic further exacerbates the risk of mental health issues. So some of the common mental problems or health issues that's impacting school children include the uncertainty, fear of getting the virus, sleep problems, worries about the future, just to name a few. Parents also share a fair load of stress at this time as they cope with more involvement in helping their kids learn, all the while themselves working or coping with loss of employment. Tonight, we acknowledge the stress on the mental psyche of both children and their parents, and we'll speak to several leaders in our community about their thoughts on this topic. But first, I would like to introduce to you our moderator for tonight. So, our moderator for tonight is Ms. Jillian Sherman. Yes, so Ms. Jillian Sherman is the assistant principal at Brighter Choice Charter School for Boys. During the 2019-2020 school year, she served as acting principal during the crux of COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter movement. As an educator, she is eager and determined to make a difference. Throughout her 11 years there, she has academically developed scholars in kindergarten through 5th grade in multiple subject areas, including English language arts, math, and writing, just to name a few. Ms. Sherman has played an integral part in ensuring that her scholars grow up to be well-rounded gentlemen, not only in elementary school, but in middle school, high school, college, and in life. Jillian Sherman has shared her many talents by organizing the school's first track and field team, which thrives today and has grown from 15 to 78 scholar athletes. Jillian Sherman is an active member of her church, where she serves as the local choir director and praise and worship leader. Last but not least, she is a member of our Albany, New York Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, where she has served in several officer capacities. Please welcome our moderator for tonight, Jillian Sherman.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Good evening to all, and to the dynamic women of the Albany, New York Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I say thank you for allowing me to be your moderator. Families, friends, scholars, and community partners, allow me now to introduce to you tonight's panelists. We have Dr. Kimberly Young Wilkins, who is currently the Deputy Commissioner of P2 Instructional Support of the New York State Education Department. Prior to this appointment, Dr. Wilkins was the Assistant Commissioner of the Office of Innovation and School Reform. From 2016 to 2017, Dr. Wilkins was the interim superintendent of schools for the City School District of Albany. She has spent the majority of her career in Albany, and in 2005, she was selected to open the newly created Stephen and Harriet Myers Middle School and worked as the building principal for 11 years. She was previously the principal of PS 16, or Pine Hills Elementary School, assistant principal at Philip Livingston Magnum Academy, and prior to that, a 9th grade social studies teacher at Albany High School. She has served as a volunteer in the Greater Albany chapter of Jack and Jill of America and serves the illustrious Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Dr. Wilkins obtained a doctorate in education from the Sage Colleges, a Master's of Science degree in social studies education from the State University of New York at Albany, and completed a Bachelor's of Science degree in American History from Regents College, and holds a New York State Administration certification. She is married to Curtis Wilkins and is the proud mother of 2 daughters. Next, we have Andrea Marques-clarke, who currently serves as the Leadership Academy Principal at Albany High School. Prior to her tenure as a building principal, Ms. Marques-clarke was a certified school psychologist in both New York City and Albany, New York. With over 27 years of experience in a field of education, Andrea has dedicated her entire professional life to improving student achievement by advocating for students' rights to have equitable access to exemplary educational programs and differentiated resources. Ms. Marques-clarke also fully understands that maintaining meaningful relationships with students, staff, and parents is the key to a successful career in education. Our third panelist for tonight is Reverend Michael Aaron Poindexter, who serves as the Minister of Community Life and Outreach of the Metropolitan Baptist Church of Albany, New York. He has earned a bachelor's degree in religious studies, Africana Studies, and business from the University at Albany, a Master's of Divinity degree from the United Theological Seminary of Dayton, Ohio, and is currently pursuing a second master's degree in social welfare, also from the University at Albany. Professionally, he works for the City School District of Albany, where he oversees the community school implementation at Schuyler Achievement Academy. And he also serves as the district-wide culinary relevant educator, where he seeks to raise the awareness surrounding the lack of equity, prevalence of systematic racism, and potential for change in our communities. Mr. Poindexter serves our City of Albany Police's Reinvention Collaborative and is supported by his beautiful wife, Amber, and their 3 wonderful children. Our final panelist for tonight is Nichele Darby. She has firsthand experience of how mental health can affect Black families when she lost her son and niece to suicide within a 2-year period. This experience and her willingness to heal led her to become the chair for the AFSP Out of Darkness Walks in Schenectady, and later a member of the board for the Capital Region chapter for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Nichele has 10 years of experience leading support groups for adults, teens, and youth, providing preventative support to students in the groups the students in Schenectady City School District, and suicide prevention for individuals in Black and Brown communities. A member of the board for the Hometown Health Centers, and she's a member of the New York State Black Youth Suicide Prevention Work Group. These experiences give her a rich understanding of how Black and Brown communities are being affected by mental health, making her a strong and passionate advocate for illness prevention through mental health awareness. Nichele works with SCDC students from, she works for the Schenectady City School District families and students and staff to support mental health care access, and acts as an office manager for the crisis prevention team. So tonight, we are going to dive deep into and unpack the issues that are common amongst us all. As we are speaking, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat, and our tech team will note them for our question and answers portion. So let's begin by hearing from our educators. So during this precedented time, there are various types of learning that takes place. Can our panelists tell us briefly what type of programming is currently taking place in your schools? Are scholars 100% physically in school, hybrid, or are they 100% remote? Dr. Wilkins.
Hi. I was going to give you the perspective of the state education department, because we have did a survey on the modalities that are opening up. So just so this wonderful body understands, there are hybrid, which is a combination of remote and in class, as well as in person in class, and then there's remote. On the state level, we did the survey for 6,300 entities, which is public, private, charters, everybody. We have 62% of the districts are open, buildings are opening up as hybrid status, 20% in person and about 17 in remote. And that was from the first day of school. That's kind of the general umbrella. But I also want to remind folks, as this COVID has come, ebbed and flowed, some buildings had to shut down classes, buildings, districts because of the exposure to COVID. So that has ebbed and flowed. We're also hearing that some districts are actually going into the red zone or the yellow zone, and they're starting to do some preemptive strikes or shutting down. So just be mindful at the state level. What we're seeing in the Albany capital region, it's throughout the whole state. And then those who are joining us from New York City, you saw the changes of going in person shut down immediately into remote learning due to COVID. So that's kind of the overall umbrella for the state at this point.
Thank you for that overview. Ms. Marques-clarke, can you tell us what that looks like for you in the public schools?
Sure. So Albany City School District has multiple models, I'm going to say. We have our K through 6 that is in person, with the exception of parents who have self-opted out of that. And then for our 7th through 12th graders, we have currently all virtual, with the exception of special education students, our self-contained special education students that are following an in-person model. However, we have now started what we call phase 2, which is introducing a hybrid model in a sense in Albany City School District. The building where I work, a Brooklyn Korean Technical Center, now has our CTE students coming in-house to do their labs. And we're looking into doing that same thing for art and music and other encore classes that require a hands-on aspect to their learning. So we are slowly allowing students to come in. Again, it's really student choice. If a parent feels that they are uncomfortable with students accessing their education in-house, we still have to allow for a virtual component to the learning. Thank you.
Nice. So let's stay right there. So what are a couple of changes that you've seen to the way that classroom teachers are teaching based on our hybrid model? So if they're in class, what do you see are some changes that the schools have to make to accommodate scholars?
Still me? So
yes,
as we have 3 self-contained special education classes. Students are primarily sitting in the same classroom all day, and teachers are pushing into the room for the instruction. So what that looks like is that we have teachers' assistants who are primarily with the kids all day. They have their lunch in the same classroom as with they're doing the instruction. And then when they have their, what we call encore classes, so maybe music and art or PE, they have those classes virtually using their Chromebook. So that's how we are doing it in Albany City School District. We're trying to limit movement so that we can keep a close contact on cohorts and who the students actually have exposure to throughout the day.
What about inside the classrooms? I know that there are a lot of barriers that are set up, whether it be shields, desks. What is the look of the classroom?
So in my building, we had to remove a lot of the desks, and then it depended on the size of the classroom, determine how many desks could be in there. And then we literally have marked space where the desk would fit, either with a square or an X, and the desk goes right in between. And the students have been well versed in the fact that the desk cannot move, and that is their desk, their personal space. We ask that students QR code into the classroom on a daily basis. There's also hand sanitizer located right at the door, so as they enter, they can sanitize their hands. Teachers are working with students, but not breaking that 6-foot distance. So it's, that's the plus of having Chromebooks, so the teacher can see actually what the student is doing without getting really close to the student. So to make sure that we all remain safe. And students, as I state, are eating lunch. So lunch is being provided to the students in their classroom at their desk. And that would be the only time where their mask would be removed, is when they're eating during designated times.
All of these guidelines and restrictions must take a toll mentally on our scholars. So, Mr. Poindexter, what do you feel are some of the pros and cons of virtual learning?
Well, there are a lot of pros and there are a lot of cons. First of all, the pros, students are now home. And I think the major piece of that is that parents wanted to keep their students home for safety reasons. They didn't want them to have access to anyone who may be exposed to COVID. And so, yeah, they're home now. They're safe in their own environment. And because they're home, they're spending more time with mom, with dad, with siblings. And so one of the byproducts of COVID-19, one of the byproducts of virtual learning, is that everyone got nice, comfortable, and cozy again as we increase family time, right? So a lot of people are home, spending more time. Parents are more in tune if they're able to stay home with their students' education. They're able to check in a little bit more on their classwork. And so those are two of the pros of virtual learning. You still have access to your education, you still have access to enrichment, and you get to do it from your home environment. There are, of course, with everything with pros, there are now cons, right? So the cons are lack of social interaction. If I'm home all day, staring at a screen all day, I don't get to interact with my peers. I may get the academic component, but I miss out on that social aspect, that social interaction that students, especially early in elementary, really need as they mature in life. Not only the lack of social interaction, but we saw firsthand, City School District of Albany, and I'm sure many districts around the state, if students are required to be home and learn virtually, they need access to resources. That's a Chromebook, that's internet. And we found that a lot of our districts didn't have one-to-one ratios for students who needed Chromebooks. And we found out that students didn't have access to strong internet at home that would be able to sustain what they needed for work. And so, yeah, you're home virtually, but how good is it if you're home virtually, but you can't learn because you're waiting weeks on end to get a Chromebook, and you don't have access to the internet. And so those were two major cons that, we had to rectify. The other piece is, a pro is definitely being at home with a parent and a caregiver. And if you're in a loving, productive space, then that's awesome. But if you're one of our students who lives in a house that you have a parent or a caregiver who's physically or verbally abusive, then now you have increased time, face time in front of them. And so, with the pro is the con. And so we've seen both aspects of it with all of our students, especially at Schuyler Achievement Academy. And the last con that I'll give you is, if I'm a student that really benefits from a teacher in my face giving me that one-on-one time and attention, I may not necessarily be able to get that same access if I'm trying to grasp that common core, right, through a computer screen. And so that's a con. And so, you know, we've seen both sides of the coin. There are pros that come with it and there are cons. And so we try to do what we can to remedy the cons.
Miss Darby, have you seen a change? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Dr. Wilkins.
Really quickly in regards to the, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I wanted to comment this with Reverend Poindexter's point about the pros and cons. There's a real disconnect about the digital divide. The number of school districts downstate and around us are not one-to-one. How do you go into remote without one-to-one devices? And the connectivity is a major problem. You might have strong internet, but you got 5 people using it. Guess what? Somebody not getting that internet. So there's major issues around there. So at the state level, we did a survey. So we're asking districts to give us information. We did it back in June, and guess what? We got 50% response. I'm not playing with them. I need 100% response because we need to know what's happening with every single one of our districts in our building. We need to make sure every child has a device and every child has connectivity. So we have another digital equity survey that went out on October 20th, having it back due on December 1st. We need that information. So we're asking not just about the children, we're asking about the families. And guess what? We have a number of teachers who are not connected. How are they teaching without connectivity and devices? So we got a major problem with that. So that's a big, big con. And just so everybody on here knows, we're dealing with it to the best of our ability, but we will have answers for you at the middle of December about connectivity. So it's a big issue right now.
Thank you so much for that, because I know that that can provide people with a lot of frustration when they can't get the instruction delivered to the scholars who need it the most. So with that being said, now we're moving on to more of a mental aspect of this. So Ms. Darby, has there been a change to the delivery of mental health care services that you provide during COVID-19? And if so, tell us more about that.
Sure, yes. In the beginning, before pre-COVID, we get a lot of our referrals from our teachers in our classrooms. And with the children being home, a lot of our educators, administrators, and teachers aren't putting eyes on our children. So we're not getting a lot of those referrals where we can help our children that are home. The other thing is with them being home, there's still a lot of stigma around mental health. And at the moment, our parents are pretty much the gatekeepers and the eyes and the ears to what's going on with the children in the homes. And because what we found is because of the stigma with mental health and maybe personal experiences behind maybe physicians or et cetera, it's being hard to go through parents to be able to help our children in the school districts with their mental health. So we are seeing a change in how that is delivered. The other thing is we were seeing children in schools. We were seeing them in our office, and we had to go to virtual. Virtual is okay when you're dealing with the high schoolers and middle schoolers who who are able to express how they're feeling. But when you're looking at elementary school kids, you really need to be in front of them, and we're finding it difficult to engage with those children.
A lot of parents, just like the teachers, are expressing frustration. They're stressed because of what's taking place, and they're not doing so well mentally or emotionally themselves. What are schools doing to take care of the whole family and not just attending to the scholars themselves?
Is this back to me?
Anyone who wants it.
Okay, sure. Schenectady School District is, I'm not sure as a whole what the district is doing. I do know that the crisis prevention team is trying to address our parents and their daily needs. So a lot of our social workers have moved to working with parents along with working with their children and being that aid and their guide, that extra person to help them. Me, myself, I've had conversation with parents, and I'm at the point of helping parents find food, shelter. So we are trying to address, and I know the school district, the social workers in the school district, I have heard are doing the same, trying to address those other needs in the families.
Yeah.
So also, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I completely agree with everything she said. Even at Schuyler Achievement Academy, we are a community school. And so, you know, I give people the analogy that community school is much like putting water in a balloon. And if you have, you know, holes in the balloon that sprout out, you know, the community school model looks to fill those holes, right? And so, you know, since we shut down in March, we were providing 100 of our students with weekend food backpacks, right? If the kid's not coming to the building, how are we going to give them the food? And so we had staff members, myself, others in the building, administrators who literally went and delivered 100 backpacks of food every Friday to students at their homes, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to make sure our students eat, and we know it's going to be a resource to the families. We've partnered with Capital Region food pantries, and we get 300 pounds of fresh fruits and veggies every Monday that parents can get free of charge. Why? Because we know food insecurity is a big thing, especially, you know, COVID-19 has exacerbated needs that were already there. And so I think, you know, one of the big things that we've focused on is trying to fill those holes. And when parents call and say, hey, I need a job, we're making phone calls to see who's hiring. When parents call and say, you know, our kids need food, you know, the National Grid has threatened to cut off my utilities. Now we're calling National Grid and we're letting parents know, hey, you know, there's a program that you can get in so that they don't do that to you in the middle of the dead of winter when it arrives. So I think that schools have the unique ability, because we see our students every day in person and virtually, to you know, we know when a kid's not right. You know, we know when they come in and they're not feeling good. We know when they're coming and they're smiling, but on the inside, something's really going on. And so just trying to support the parent, because if we can uplift the parent, then they can be a better help to uplift their kid.
So we talked about.
I just
Go
wanted
ahead.
to add that Schenectady was also giving out food and providing children and families with food baskets for breakfast and lunch. And also through the summer, they were providing food through the summer to families.
So we provided a lot of resources to families, but what are some of the things that we can tell, tips or advice that we can give to parents struggling with balancing and providing structure for their children as they learn?
There is one statement that I just want to give, and this is just heavy on my heart. And I want to just say this to all the parents. Don't be so hard on yourself. No one is to blame. You're not to blame. You're not in it alone. Don't beat yourself up. And that's just the main thing I just wanted to say. As parents, we are tasked with holding everything together. And especially as I'm a single mother. So as a single mother, I'm the everything. And we have to learn not to be so hard on ourselves. We are human. No one gave us a playbook to read, to go through this. So don't be so hard on yourself, and you're not in it alone. And that's just something I really just wanted to say to all the parents.
I wanted to add to that. Also, don't be afraid to ask. You know, we may not be able to know what's going on, but if you reach out to the school and you ask to speak to, you know, start from the top if you need to, ask to speak to the principal and let us know what it is that you need, then we'll be able to assist you and provide you with the resources or the person that can help you to meet those needs. If you don't let us know, sometimes it's difficult for us to support. We again, with remaining in contact with parents, we know our students and we know those students that had insecurities before, and we're doing a concerted effort in making sure that we reach out. But, you know, we don't know if, you know, you might have lost a job and you're no longer as secure as you were before. But please do not hesitate. Use us as a resource. Let us know so that we can provide you with everything that we know, and we can put you onto the right people to get that assistance that we have a full playbook on. So please, 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 you don't ask, you don't get is my motto. Please ask.
Yes, Ms. Darby, the transparency that you just shown is raving in the chat right now. So we just want to keep things going. And the question that's next is, how do we keep kids motivated and focused on their schoolwork while they're at home? So we're telling parents, yes, don't be so hard on our kids, but how can we intrinsically motivate them to stay focused on the task and get the job done?
For me, as speaking as a parent whose children are home virtually schooling, and I have a middle schooler and I have 2 grandchildren home with me, and they're all virtual. So I have all these, and my daughter was online working home, and at one point I was home online. So you think all of us in the household trying to work, trying to find a spot, bathroom, kitchen, you name it, we're trying to find a spot to do something. And what I find is that giving them breaks, it's different when the kids are in school, they have a break every now and then. When you're home and it seems like, because it's so much work, it seems like the kids are just on from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock nonstop. Give them a break. That is a lot of screen time. We talk about how too much screen time can affect our kids in other ways. And I know we need to do this for our education, but give variety in schooling. Let's say if it's math, give variety. Occasionally I'll take my daughter in the kitchen and we'll bake something, and that's a math lesson. You know, it's a math lesson, but it's different than the normal on the screen. Just, you know, doing exactly what she's supposed to do right there on the screen. It's something different. It's a variety. So I find that giving them variety, giving them breaks. Sometimes we'll just stop in the middle of the day and the whole family will take a walk. Just give us a break. So that's some of the things that I do.
Nice.
Maybe some of the educators can add on to something that can help for our parents. I like something new too.
Well, one thing I can definitely say is parents have to remain consistent with their children, because consistency will provide that routine for their scholars. And if they take that routine out of the process, then they can oftentimes get lost. But in the process of doing that routine, how can the parents maintain a relationship with the teachers during virtual learning?
Is that for me?
Dr. Wilkins, can you answer this one? Because I know you're like an OG in this education game here. And so you have many years of experience, you know, dealing with parents in and out of your office, but now we're in a virtual world. You didn't have to deal with this back then, but you know how to deal with family. So what is it that teachers can do to maintain a relationship with parents during now this virtual time?
You know, I have to tell you, we did a guidance for the reopening of schools, and a major premise of this 153-page document was around social, emotional, and engagement of children with children as well as parents. Teachers are going to have to really change their game plan. The COVID has taken over all aspects of normalcy for us. So now you have tools in your chest to go to reach out to parents certain way. That has now changed. They're going to have to use all the tools in their tool chest to reach out to parents. In some cases, parents are not really technically savvy. So you have to pick up the phone and make a phone call. In some cases, guess what? You may have to go old school, get the 6-foot distance and make some drive-by contacts with your families. You have to stay in contact with the parent. You're not going to be, everything's going to be through this wonderful digital virtual world. You're going to have to go old school. You might be doing snail mail. You may be doing phone calls. You may be you know, stopping by. It's going to be a number of ways, but you have to have relationship with every single one of your children's parents and families. You have no choice right now. We're in COVID. This is a new paradigm shift for us. So I'm going old school. Sorry, Jillian. I'm going old school.
So Dr. Wilkins talked about the connection between the teachers and the parents. Ms. Marques-Clarke, can you talk about the relationship between teachers and the student? How can they build that?
Absolutely. So at Albany High School, and I'm proud to say, we have enacted what we call pods. So every teacher is responsible for 15 to 18 students for the entire year. So you have 100 kids or 130 kids, yes you do. But every morning you have a pod class, and that class is to make sure that you're reaching out and having contact with every one of the students. If there's a student that's missing, you're responsible for reaching out and finding out what's going on with that student. You're that person that student will go to if they're having problems in math, regardless as to whether you're their math teacher. And then they will problem solve with that student, and they reach out to another teacher send an email, help them with the math if they can. So that's what's important here, is to make sure that every one of our kids have someone that they can rely on and develop that long-term relationship, especially when you're all virtual. So that's what we have instilled. What's also, as administrators, we're doing is we're checking screen time with students, the amount of time that they're engaging in a Google Classroom. And if we're finding that there's some issues there, we are making personal phone calls. We are reaching out and asking parents what they need. As was discussed before, some parents have one Chromebook in the home and they have 5 children that are all vying for that time on that Chromebook. We then now will send out an email that the teachers know that this family right now is struggling in that capacity, and how can we help prioritize what that student needs to complete and allow for that student to have extra time or a different deadline. Those are the things that we're doing to make sure that we're interacting and staying engaged with our students.
So Ms. Darby and Mr. Poindexter, from a parent perspective, what are you expecting from the teachers or the administration to give you for your children?
Well, Ms. Darby, please go for it. Please
No, you go, please.
No, ladies first. Ladies
okay.
first.
I'm expecting communication, and we heard a teacher to student, and we heard teacher to parent. But for our parents, if you're not getting what you need and you're not getting for your kids, no one knows what you need unless you reach out. So get on the phone, let your teachers, let your administrators know exactly what it is that you need and why your kid is not able to log on. We've had some issues where parents have gotten phone calls from teachers and or from administrators, but they were reaching out to the teachers. So just stay connected and just stay connected with everyone. Let everyone know what's going on, why your child is not able to log on, and what you need. That's the only thing I can say as a parent.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said. I go into the school building every single day, and my wife stays home with our 3 wonderful children, and so she'd probably be a better resource for this. But one of the things that she shared is that just constant communication. Every day, every other day, I'm getting an email from my son and my daughter's teacher. We're getting Google Classroom notifications. They're sending us text messages. My kid McKenna, my 4-year-old now, geez, she did something in school that was really neat, and the teacher took a picture of it and texted us real time so that we could see what she was doing. And so my oldest, he's in kindergarten and he's virtual, because he's home all day and we didn't want him in school all day. Whereas my middle would only be in pre-K for 2 hours out of the day. And so she's got plexiglass and mask up. And so, but the constant communication, I think even working in a school building, our parents get sick and tired of hearing my voice. You know why? Because I'm sending them robocalls every other day. I'm shooting them text messages. I'm keeping them in the loop. And I think the more that teachers understand where the parents are coming from, and then parents understand and can put realistic expectations on teachers, because teachers are navigating this as just as much as parents are, then the two can work together for the benefit of the student.
Nice. So we have scholars who we can get them to focus within the classroom because we have behavior management tactics, taxonomies that we use. But at home, parents don't necessarily have these tools behind the screen of the virtual world. How can we help parents to manage distractions that are taking place within the home? Because I might have 6 other siblings and we share a room. How can we help parents to manage those distractions?
I can, there are a number of ways.
I can't answer that one. I'm still working on that one.
Amber does a great job of, Ashton has his own little space. And when it's time for him to get on, school, he goes and has his routine of where he's supposed to go. He has his workstation set up there, and the smallest baby who's about to turn 2, she'll do her Achille on the TV in a different room so that she's interactive in education, and our 4-year-old has now just got home from school. And so she's wired, but she'll sit down with a book. And I guess the end of it all is routine, right? I think the more you can set up routines, that the children have expectations, COVID has completely shattered consistency. But the more you can set routines so that your kid knows every single day, you're not going to be able to just randomly play on the Xbox or randomly play on this or randomly do this. This is the routine we have. And when it's time to learn, it's time to learn. There are some other techniques that I'm sure my wife uses that she probably wouldn't want me to speak to on this panel discussion. But she makes sure that our kids get the education that they need, because at the end of the day, education is their key to success.
So how can we help parents to decompress when the day is done and they're done doing their job and helping their scholars to access their learning, their different ed lights, or however their submission of the work? How can we give them some tips what are some tips that we can give them to decompress?
I can take this. Well, it starts with, that word self-care, and really just taking a moment. And I know it's difficult, especially if you have multiple, but just really taking a moment for yourself, and just almost, mindfulness, or it doesn't have to necessarily be meditation, but really understanding that you need to fill yourself up. Because if you're not filled, then you can't give anymore. And at a time where your kids may be home and you're struggling to, all of that balance, you need to have yourself, whether it be a half hour or just 10 minutes in a closet, just some time to just, shore yourself up and give yourself what you need so you can go back out there and deal with them kids. That would be my advice for myself. What I do is I go for a drive. That's my way of decompression. So sometimes I'm almost home, but before I get home, I take a ride around the neighborhood and I just kind of look, oh, look, that person put up that. Oh, look, there's a new for sale sign, whatever it is, just to take myself away from work before I enter home life, which is a totally different culture that I have to, adapt to. So that's been giving myself that replenishment, that time to be alone, and then attack it again. Because we all have full-time jobs and full-time jobs when you get home too. And we know that that can be difficult. So please, please, please take care of yourself.
I would just speak for some of those parents that maybe don't drive and are stuck at home with their kids and can't get away. I like to do, I'll either walk out the door and just take a walk around the block. To be honest, my safe zone is the bathroom. And I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to that. I'll go take a long shower. That's my safe zone. No one bothers me in the bathroom. So you just got to find your spot and just decompress wherever it can be. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
I'm just going to add one thing. I hope you're hearing. Can you hear me, Soror Jillian?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear? Okay, I just want to add one thing. There's a lot of resources out there to assist parents and adults. There's a happening with the teachers right now. Teachers are starting to get burned out as well. They're doing remote learning as well as class, and it's a huge paradigm shift. So we're starting to see some decomposing of teachers and educators, and as well as our parents. So I want to actually just also remind, there's a lot of online tools out there around resilience, toolkits, meditation. There's a whole slew of things. And that's SED, we do have a webpage on resources with student supports and for parents and adults and educators. So go on, everyone's got a phone. Parents, you got your phone, you get onto your Instagram, you get onto your, everything else, your Twitter and all that. Start getting some resources on the web as well. They're there and they're really with SED and the toolkits that are there.
Thank you so much for those resources. Ms. Darby, in your opinion, have you noticed a drastic effect on the mental health of school-age children if they do not have social interaction with their peers on a daily basis?
Yes, yes, I have. I'm going to speak for my own children because I do have children who have some mental health issues. And my middle schooler is struggling because she does not have that interaction socially at all. She is a shy kid. So you think about a lot of our children that are normally shy into themselves, and to be shut off like this and not have any interaction at all. It is affecting her, and I'm kind of scared how it's going to affect her as she gets older and have to deal with individuals socially. So I try to, I do a lot of talking to her. I guess I'm the only socially one here with her. And she does a lot of reading, but she's still missing that social piece, and trying to get her hooked up with other kids in the area, because a lot of other parents are still nervous about contact because of COVID. So I see it affecting them a lot. I see a lot of anger coming out of children because they're angry at how COVID has pretty much stopped their lives and changed their lives. And so I find that a lot of our children, school-age children, are angry, anxious, anxiety, depressed, scared, scared when their mother leaves the house, scared when their parents go and they don't come home at the time that they usually come home. So I have seen an increase.
Nice. I just want to share this real quick. It was in the chat. It says, admins, do your best to check on your teachers the same way you want to make sure students and families are well. We have to encourage each other. Oh, that's a very powerful quote. We have to make sure we're checking on our teachers, because like Dr. Wilkins said, teachers are in a burnout, and I'm sure administrators are in a burnout as well, because virtual learning is not the same. It is definitely not the same. It is taking a toll on our health. It's taking a toll on, the way that we function as normal. So yes, make sure you are checking up on teachers as well. In regards to this interaction piece, do you feel, in your opinion, that the social skills are being developed? And if you feel they're being developed, how? Or if they're not being developed, how can parents or teachers or administrators develop the soft skills or the social people skills of their scholars? Don't all answer at once. I'll read it again. So, how can we pretty much work on their social skills? We know that there's a gap. We know that there's an issue. How can we work on their social skills? I know that's something that we do in school. We use Kagan strategies, which is pretty much turning and talking to one another. Yes, it's something different, but 6 feet apart, we can still implement turning and talking to our peers about instruction virtually. We see a lot of instructors using breakout rooms, and these breakout rooms are allowing for small peer groups to be able to be in effect. So there are so many ways that educators are being creative. We have Bitmoji classrooms that they're creating that are putting people into small group rooms for guided reading instruction and allowing scholars to converse with one another. So those are just some ways that we can still to implement those social skills. I know that a lot of people are fearing about interactions, but some parents are still having play dates. Some parents are still allowing their scholars to social distance with people they know. So that's another thing that parents can actually do. If you trust and know the people that you're around, have those scholars still interact with their friends. So how can we establish daily routines for social isolation for scholars? So parents are having some difficulty establishing routines. How can we help them, Dr. Wilkins?
Well, I think
Can't hear you. Go ahead.
One of the examples that you actually explained was we were using the platforms right now. So it becomes really important that parents might want to also do play dates through the Zooms, and actually still do some play dates in a safe environment, because we are hearing the same thing, that there are pods that are being established with parents and other parents. They have the same pod of 5 or 6 kids that get together on a bi-weekly or weekly basis. So that's outside the school. but within the school, there are going to be ways that we can actually encourage socialization and some interaction going on. So I think, again, we got to use the platforms the best we can. I want to go back to one statement, though. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We are in the middle of COVID. We need to give each other a break when it comes to the, someone put in the chat, we're building the plane, flying the plane, and repairing the plane all at the same time. So we're going to live through this, and we're going to get to the other side. And it's going to be a different paradigm shift when we go back into education and one-on-one. Remote learning will never go away. So the socialization that's going to the outreach of this is going to be different. So we're going to have to set up some protocols and procedures around remote learning, but it's here to stay. It really is here to stay. So we're going to have to kind of get through this to the other side. So that's just my comment.
One person put in the chat, we have to model appropriate interactions for students, include talk time for students virtually to just talk and interact with their peers about things other than academics, because we are just cramming academics in them, but they sometimes through COVID, they had to deal with that first. They now have to get back into just reacclimating to society as well. Someone wrote, how are we seeing the major differences in mental and physical disabilities? So with virtual learning, with those who have physical and mental disabilities, is it different for them?
Yes, it is different.
Tell us more.
For them. What's going to happen with students who have disabilities, they have an IEP, and it's going to be very important for parents to stay on top of all essence and elements of their IEP. And in some cases, it's cognitive, it's social, emotional, it's physical. So in a lot of cases, districts are actually bringing back their special needs students, but parents are very aware of their rights under FAPE and what the school should or should not be doing for their child. So it becomes really important for special need parents with IEPs to make sure their IEP is being adhered to the best of their ability. And they have rights under those students. Now for students who have mental health, if they do not have an IEP, they're still social workers, psychologists that are supposed to be in the school. I think Ms. Darby mentioned about the crisis team, or I think Reverend Poindexter mentioned about the crisis teams and the intervention teams that are at the school. It becomes really important for teachers to be aware when they start to see a breakdown of a child on screen or in class. But again, going back to students with disabilities, they have the IEP sitting there, and parents, please use that IEP to get your education for your child every day. And there's all kind of pecking orders and steps that you have to go through with the IEPs, but they need to adhere to the IEP to the best of their ability and make sure the children are getting their instruction practices.
So in regards to IEP, we know that there's different branches of disabilities. We have ADHD, autism, hearing impairments, and some feel that there's an overload with them learning virtually. So how are children being supported? How are parents being supported with scholars who have disabilities? Yes, we have the IEP, but how are they being supported?
So, I can speak for Albany City School District. Again, we have in-person learning because we understand that, students with disabilities need structure, not that others do not, but they, that's all part of their IEP and their learning needs. So we make sure that we are providing an environment that is, has structure. They see the same people. They're able to reach out to their the workers, for a social worker or their physical therapist or their occupational therapist still continues to do those services in-house. So we tried our best to give them the same supports that they would get normally. For those parents who opt out of the in-person, it doesn't allow us to opt out of for what they need. So those same services are provided to families at home. We make sure that it continues that way. And so parents on the phone, if that is not happening for you within your own school district, within your school, as Dr. Wilkins said, you reach out and you make sure that that occurs. Let them know that you're aware of the IEP and what the student needs, and we have to, by law, provide those services to students.
Now, physical health is just as important as mental health. And I was shocked to learn today that some schools are choosing not to do physical fitness I can say that my school is doing physical fitness, which we're glad for that. But assuming the lack of physical education courses in person, how are schools assuming the physical health aspect? How are we maintaining that?
So I know at Scholar Achievement Academy, there's not a period or frame in the day where I can walk through where our physical education teacher hasn't pushed into the classroom to give them physical education in the room. They're not, they're still staying in their classroom for COVID-19 safety precautions, but the PE teacher has either gone into the classroom, or for our virtual learners, they've actually gone to the PE teacher's Google Stream and doing physical education, virtually. The school, my school's in zip code 12206, and that zip code has one of the highest child obesity rates in the city of Albany. And so, one of our missions at Scholar Achievement was not only to address mental health, but to address physical health. And so I know that they're getting their physical education. Beautiful outside today. They were outside for recess, running around, ripping and running. And so even for parents who are home with their students virtually, as Miss Darby said, you got to offer yourself some space for grace and stop what you're doing. Go outside for a walk. My three wonderful kids that take up all of my energy, in a hot second, we'll send them outside into the backyard and say, go play, go rip and run, go on the swings, go down the slide. And it's necessary, right? Because I used to go play basketball every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. I haven't played since March, and it's starting to get to me. And so I know I have to get on the treadmill, or I got to run around. And so it's the same with our kids. Everything that we've experienced, we're adults and we've struggled a little bit how to navigate it. Our kids are still learning life. And so we have to make sure that, especially as it relates to physical health, that we're, giving them the resources and skills that they need to just have fun, to just be kids. And so that's what we're doing in school. They get physical education pushed in, and our virtual learners receive it as well.
So you talked about there's recess taking place. So for the students who come in person, what precautions are you taking for activities like physical education or sports or recess that's taking place?
So the students have to wear their masks. They're outdoors, but they have to keep their mask on, and they're instructed that the goal is to still stay 6 feet away. And so the teachers are literally coming up with games that students are playing as classes, but they're keeping their social distance. Just because we're outside, yes, the possibility of contraction decreases when you're outdoors, but it doesn't completely go away. And so we have to make sure that we're still balancing, making sure that our kids are receiving recess, but still being safe. And so our teachers, at any given point, they'll be outside playing, something with a ball. I can't think of the name of the game right now, but they're socially distant and they're keeping their mask on. But at least that's what we're doing now when it gets cold. There's another plan for recess in the cold weather, but for right now, while they're outdoors, that's what we're doing.
And Soror, Jillian, I just want to make an answer to real quick thing. Parents need to be empowered. You're not receiving gym or art or one of your courses. You need to question your school about what they're doing with the schedule. And you should not just be settling in on whatever is happening. You need to have answers. So I wish our audience would just reach out to your school. If you have a question about your schedule, about the reading or AIS or whatever services, you need to question your school. You need to go to your teacher. If you don't get an answer from the teacher, you need to go to the building principal. You don't get something from the building principal, you go to the superintendent, but you need to find out what schedule and what's happening with your child, because school is open. We might be under COVID, we might be under a pandemic, but the school building technically is not closed. School is open. So please, parents, empower yourself to question anything that you're not comfortable with. Please pick up the phone, call, and find out what's going on.
Now, I said to myself, because I'm a runner, and I said to myself, oh my, if I grew up in this time, no track, no basketball, I don't even know where my life would be right now. So what do you feel is the impact of the decrease in extracurricular activities during COVID-19 and the mental implications that it has on scholars? Because for me, it's tough just thinking about it. And I'm thinking about those seniors who had a scholarship to college and it's gone. I'm thinking about, you know, people who could have been drafted, you know, out of college and it's gone. Like those things, what do you think what toll, Ms. Darby, do you think it's taken on their minds?
Well, I have to be honest, I'm not a social worker, but I am an adult. And if I had worked my life off pretty much as a teenager, it is my life for a goal, and then COVID stopped it, I would be devastated. It's a loss. It's like you're mourning something, you're grieving something that you could have had or you did have that you've lost, if you think about it. That's how I'd look at it.
So I can speak as a parent of a 12th grader at Albany High School, who has now lost her, in her mind and in reality, lost her senior year. You know, senior year has dances. It has, you know, she's part of the swim team. She, you know, all of the different things that you would do as a senior, being the top dog in the school building, and she has lost that. So yes, there is definitely a grieving period. There's definitely a difference in the way she is interacting. It's definitely impacting her as it relates to her being an only child. You know, so there's not even another sibling anywhere for her to interact with. So what I'm doing personally is, you know, encouraging her to reach out to her friends. I'm not really comfortable right now with her doing social engagements, you know, because, you know, COVID. So, you know, it's really a matter of reaching out and doing those activities on a virtual level. As it relates to going on to college, and I am hoping and understanding that colleges understand what we're under and not holding students, you know, accountable for certain aspects and of what they're doing. So I want to believe that their colleges will understand it. Let's say, for example, you were on the basketball team last year and the year before, and you may have, you know, video clips or someone who can speak to your ability, that they would be taking that into consideration because of what we're under. A lot of schools right now, Albany High School does not have an active, you know, sports calendar for many of the sports. So it's something that they cannot, they have no control over. So yes, it is definitely a mourning period. And yes, we should definitely be reaching out and asking our kids how they feel about it and allowing for them to have that space to discuss it. And because you can't get this year back, you really absolutely cannot. So it's up to us to be mindful of that. And to right now, my daughter has a swim team chat. So they're chatting with each other and they're talking about the different things that are occurring in their life. And they're also having what's called virtual meets. So they're swimming at St. Rose, and they're also swimming against teams at Shen, but they're doing, you know, the timing, but they're not in the same room. So with sports that don't allow, you know, much contact, there are sports, but for others, basketball and football, it's got to be hard on students. But I'm really hoping that colleges understand what the students are going through and don't add an additional burden to their college experience.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, and what it did is it taught me discipline, and it forced me to, you know, manage schoolwork, manage practices, manage a little part-time job that I had, right? And so if not only are students missing out on the proms and the senior year photos and everything that comes with senior year, that skill set of the discipline necessary to succeed in college or succeed in a trade and still maintain other aspects of life is somewhat diminished. It's not completely gone, but it's somewhat diminished. And so I think one of the great things is to come up as a resource to make sure that they stay, you know, disciplined with the extracurriculars that they don't have, so that when this does, whenever that is, go away, that they can still be successful in future aspects of life.
So you talked about discipline, right? And COVID has allowed many people to get laxed in just how they treat themselves. And so what are some suggestions you would encourage parents or teachers to practice self-care together So what are some things for self-care? I know for me, something I lack in self-care is sleep and making sure that I eat or drink water. So those are my main things that I have to program in my mind to do. What can we tell families to do? What can we tell teachers to do? And what can we tell our students for self-care?
Well, we're encouraging, even at SED, for its staff to really do self-care, meditation, making sure they're looking out for their diet and their health. And we're asking the same thing for our teachers and educators through our BOCE, our network, because right now we don't do the oxygen on ourselves. How can we save our children or help our children? So again, meditation, conversation, talk to somebody, get to your friends, reach out to folks, but also take a time to breathe, relax. And again, we're in the middle of a pandemic, people. Like, really, everybody needs to step back a little bit, realize that, and believe it or not, this too will pass and we will get through it. But in the meantime, health, relaxation, meditation. I believe in prayer. Yes, Reverend Poindexter, we got prayer in there, so we got to put it out there. So
someone said that schools need to invest in their school counselors and building or develop their social emotional curriculum, building restorative practices in the classroom, and have open and honest conversations about what is happening in the community and how it is affecting them. Oftentimes we don't think about what's affecting us, and that's one way we can care for ourselves, just taking a step back and saying, what is affecting me? And so we need those outlets within the schools to help out with that. What signs should parents be on the lookout for when it comes to their child's mental health? And what signs do they need to recognize for their own mental health as well?
I'd like to speak to that. Definitely a change in your child's behavior. You know, just if you notice that they're isolating more, if they're, not logging on to their classes like they would normally do, if they're not doing their chores and you're constantly having to remind them, it seems like they're almost regressing in their developmental age and stage, please don't let those signs pass you by. Take note of them and see if it becomes a habit, and then really allow for what we're calling voice. Let your child know that you notice that there's a difference, and allow for them to be reflective and express to you what exactly is occurring with them. And then you can, reach out for help if you believe that what they're saying to you is something that you are not able to handle, or you believe that it needs to go, to a mental health professional. Do not ignore the signs.
I'll just add on to that. When we say changes, you want to look at any type of a drastic change. So if they're an outspoken person and then they're not speaking, if they're a laid back person and they're just is so energetic and almost manic, any type of dramatic change, you want to pay attention to that. The other thing is, when you do not ignore it and try to have a conversation with your child, don't be judgmental. Try your hardest not to be judgmental. I know as parents, you may hear something from your child and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Just listen. Don't feel like it's your fault. Nothing is your fault. Just listen with an open mind, and let your child know that if you need help, if you need to get help to help your child, it's okay to say that to your child. I think it's good for us to let our children know that we're human too. You know what I mean? We're in this with them together. We're, not so much above them. We understand what they're feeling. We got to always remember, like someone else just mentioned, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and everything that we're feeling as adults, our children are feeling 100 times more than we are, and they don't know how to handle what they're going through. So just have an open mind, have an open conversation, and reach out to your resources. I know in Schenectady, if your children is in the city school district, we have the crisis prevention team. As a parent, you can talk to your educators, your social workers, your administrators, and tell them that you want your child referred to our team. Get some help.
The other thing I'll say is that self-care was extremely important. That we take the time to recognize when we're changing. March came and everything shut down. There was a period of months where you couldn't go to church, you couldn't go out to eat, you couldn't do the things that you need for self-care. And so Amber and I were very conscious to make sure that, we weren't overtly snappy, but we were more patient with our 3 little youngsters, right? Because you have to be able to also not only notice the change in your children, but possibly notice a change in yourself so that you don't have a negative reaction on your kid, because COVID will come, is here, and it'll go. But a kid will remember a reaction or an incident for the rest of their lives. And so just make sure you're self-reflective of yourself and offer yourself grace, offer yourself grace.
So just to conclude our panelist forum, Gabby Capone says, the basic human needs, psychological, safety, love, belonging, self-esteem needs our students need to be met before the learning can occur. So we have to meet the scholars' needs before learning can occur. Educators cannot afford to turn a blind eye to the social, emotional needs of our students, especially during this pandemic. So as we wrap up our time together, we want to open up the floor to answer the questions from our Zoom audience members. Our goal is to get through as many as possible during this time. And so here we go. So this first question was to Dr. Wilkins. So it says, in light of Dr. Wilkins' landscape of virtual learning and the data already indicating students' high levels of absenteeism, especially students of color, is this experience compounding that experience?
Well, we're hearing about the issue of attendance. That goes back to some issues around parents. Parents need to know if the child going to school remotely or in class, hybrid, whatever. So some of that onus goes on to parents. The other onus is on to the administrators and the teachers. They need to make sure students are actively engaged and attending. And when they're not, they need to make sure they're getting to parents, letting them know, where's your child? He did not sign in for today. It should be immediate. We're doing everything virtually. They should be doing the same thing. Now, the other part of this is that some schools who do not have the technology right now, they're doing packets. That means that they're reaching children via the phone and getting packets. That's a whole nother story. How do you gauge the engagement at that point? So we got some issues happening around the state, whether you're virtual, remote, in person, or listen, packets still happening across the state. Question, and we're going through it right now with all the schools at this point. So more to come on that.
So how are schools progress monitoring scholars' proficiency on New York State Common Core standards virtually? So I can speak for, I know my school, we are definitely focusing on the scope and sequence that we outlined for our staff to follow. And then we're executing that through whether it be Packet Works or the PowerPoint presentations that we're actually delivering, because some schools are just pressing play, but some schools are actually giving live and direct instruction. So for us, it's about breaking down and unpacking that lesson essential question for scholars and then giving them that application process for them to do that. And then we have something where we are able to have the scholars show their work real time through a device that allows the teacher to be able to get what the scholars submitted through an online program. So it's very important that the school systems are having these one-on-one sessions with parents to get them acclimated with the virtual systems that we're using so that their scholars can be counted for in a grade.
So Jillian, you're talking about synchronized and asynchronized learning. Parents need to understand that the child can go onto the system later on and get a lesson from a parent or from a teacher, or they can have instruction in live time. So there's a lot of modeling going on with that. So you're absolutely correct.
We've also asked our teachers to record their lessons. They don't have to record the entire lesson, but the key points, especially maybe the first 20 minutes, so students can access that information 24 hours a day. This is very important because, as we know, some of our kids are sharing devices and they may not be able to go on in real time. We're also not penalizing kids for their attendance as long as they complete the work and turn it in, and teachers are able to go back and retroactively mark the student present. So that's how we're trying to circumvent the issues with devices and hotspots.
So how are schools, our educators, as educators, how are you motivating children with disabilities, especially in the virtual? So I think we answered that about motivating scholars with disabilities. So in the case of many students with ADHD, autism, we talked about that question as well. And so the last question that our audience wants to know, as mentioned earlier, the digital divide is very real for our children in particular. Educational organizations and local multiplicities across the state collaborating to make publicly funded Wi-Fi more readily available. If so, how is that going?
Well, we're in the process of doing that, and Soror President's actually intimately involved with that as well. We're doing a digital summit in January 2021 around this and bringing everybody. This is not just about education. This is your local politician, the legislature, the governor, all aspects. We're really looking at this as the electricity issue of the 30s and 40s. That's internet right now. Everybody should have access to the internet from top to bottom, no matter where you are in New York State. This is dismal that parts of Africa have internet and we don't have it in New York State. That's crazy. So right now, the state ed department is looking to bring everybody together. Deep Pockets, Dell, Apple, everybody coming together to get this done. We're not playing. And remember, I have a survey out right now. I want my survey answered. Parents, make sure your school answers my survey, and I need to know what's going on with the digital divide. So we're on it. So our president, she's an IT whiz. She's right there with me, and we're actually moving forward. More information to come with that. We'll share that when those summits are going on.
So since you want to slide people in there, Miss Sharon Cates-Williams, is there anything you want to add to that digital divide conversation that we've had here? Because I know we have principals on, we have many people on that really want to know, how can we help our scholars? I know today I pushed in to do DCT time, and I know the connection was in and out, and the lag time was real. So is there anything that you can give to us, some little nuggets? No?
No nuggets tonight.
I tried, everyone. I tried.
I think Dr. Wilkins pretty much covered it. So more to come. We'll make sure that we push out information as the digital summit happens, and more to come.
Thank you so much. So everyone, it was a pleasure being your moderator for today's session. We could not have done this without you joining us on our live Zoom session tonight. We once again want to say thank you to all of our panelists. Dr. Kimberly Wilkins, Deputy Commissioner of P2 Instructional Support for the New York State Education Department. Andrea Marques-clarke, Leadership Academy Principal at Albany High School. Reverend Michael Aaron Poindexter, Minister of Community Life and Outreach of Metropolitan Baptist Church of Albany, New York, and founder, Human Service Specialist of Divine Intervention Services, Inc., Nichele Darby. Yes, give it up for our panelists on tonight. Show us in the chat. Chat it up. Yes, give them a round of applause. Lastly, we express our heartfelt appreciation to the distinguished women of the Albany Alumni Chapter. Yes, the Albany, New York Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, for providing this opportunity for us to discuss mental health among school-age children and their parents during COVID-19. We want you to know that we have a survey or evaluation form concerning this panel. So please fill out that link. It is down there in the chat. https://forums.gle/x V capital J V number 7 Z capital K R lowercase v 6 capital P BHY capital TE6. I conclude by saying mental health affects every aspect of your life. It's not just this little neat issue that we can just put in a box. So take care of you. And with that said, good night, everyone. Shout outs to the committee of the Physical Health and Awareness team.
Thank you, Soror Jillian, for being the moderator of moderators. Thank you. Awesome panel. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you to our mental health committee. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Great job, Jill. Love you.
Thank you for having me, everyone. Thank you.
And what can we say?
Just tell me to go home from work.
You were awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sarah Marques-Clarke. Thank you.
Reverend
Thank
Poindexter,
you, Sarah
Nichele.
Kim. Thank you. Oh, and our other panelists left.
I
Thank
guess
you.
the last, sorry.
No, thank you, Sorors, for attending tonight.
Yes, I am too proud.
Awesome. Technology team.
I know.
You know, you guys rock. You just
Absolutely.
rock. You
Making it
just rock.
Gotta make it work.
Amber, the queen of multitasking.
Listen,
I don't know how she's going
my
to do it.
employees are still in line.
Yeah.
I knew she
And
would.
yep, and Sora McNeil and Sora Pinto-Smith, thank you both so much.
No
A
problem.
third in your series. Look at that. Series number 3. And Sora McNeil,